Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I am your host, Tim Braheem, and this will be another episode where I'll be riding solo and teaching on a topic that I find to be really important, not only in today's market, but just in general. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you find the content of this particular episode to be something valuable to forward to a friend, a family member, etc. Because this episode is going to be a little bit less about mortgage specific content, although it certainly applies, and I'll draw some correlations, and much more about just how we show up in the world. I consider the topic of meditation and mind mastery to be one of the single most important endeavors that we can engage in as human beings, both for our success in our business, but also for our success in all other aspects of our life and our connection with our friends and family members. This is a topic that I am very familiar with teaching. I've been teaching it for many, many years as a part of my Leadership 360 coaching program. Incidentally, Leadership 360 is one of the sponsors of the show. You can find out more about the Leadership 360 coaching program and how to apply and become a student on the topics of both personal development and mortgage development, of course, as well. That's the backbone of what the program is about. In the show notes to this show, you can click on the link and find out a little bit more about Leadership 360. Additionally, while we're the sponsors, this show is also sponsored by the Loan Atlas, our virtual coaching platform. It is unlike anything else in the mortgage space. It is geared towards mortgage professionals and their growth and development as successful business people and successful human beings. There are 19 of us as faculty members of the Loan Atlas. We have cumulatively funded over $29 billion in production in the course of our mortgage careers. And as a faculty, we teach mortgage professionals every single month, with 7 live coaching calls every month, as well as over 50 hours of class content. This is the MBA of the mortgage industry. I want to thank you, first of all, for listening to today's episode. If you like today's episode, please give us a like and forward it on to a friend, as I mentioned before. And if you are a subscriber of the 360 Experience podcast, I'm grateful for that as well. Please subscribe if you're not. This is how we get really great guests on the show, if we can show that we have a large subscriber base. So without further ado, let's dive in to the subject matter of the battle that is waged every day between our ears, the battle of controlling our mind and having a positive mindset, which influences our energy. So I want to get started by stating a couple of facts that I think are important for everybody to really understand. The facts statistically are this: that you have somewhere between 60 and 90,000 thoughts every single day. Each and every one of us does. And roughly 80% of those 60 to 90,000 thoughts are thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before and the day before that. We are quite literally operating on a repetitive thought loop all day long. So why is this important? Well, the question that I want to pose to you is, do you think that your thoughts influence your experience of this thing that we call life? And I would imagine that as most of you ponder that question, you would agree that absolutely they do. When we are operating off of thoughts that are negative, that are victim-based, that are counterproductive, we will see things through our own perceptual filter, our lens of the world, in a very negative light. And when we are operating off of positive thoughts, we will have a very positive experience. I actually received a text this morning from a good friend of mine, a client of mine, Mike Trejo. And Mike was recently at church this morning, and the pastor had shared some statistics about the subject matter of gratitude and how people that practice gratitude, whether it be via journaling or whether it be via stating affirmations on a daily basis, are statistically proven to have a significantly more enhanced experience of life. Now, let's think about this from the perspective of business as well. I mean, how many of you go into the grind of your business on a consistent basis, running off of a thought pattern of negativity and therefore seeing things through the lens of that negativity versus being grateful, as an example, for the fortunes that you do have? Now, I know that sometimes it doesn't seem like there's a lot to be grateful for, especially when times are tough. But when you put things into perspective, there's always something to be grateful for. I remember listening to a terrific YouTube clip from a great meditation teacher by the name of Sam Harris. And if you don't know who Sam Harris is, I highly recommend that you look him up. He's brilliant. I'm a big fan of his work. And Sam Harris said that sometimes what he does in those moments when he's struggling is he will close his eyes and he will envision all of the people in the world that would gladly and immediately trade places with him in this moment. Now, let's think about that just for a second. Even when it's tough for you in your business, things are slow, or maybe you're having a challenge with your child, or maybe things are just not going as well for you as you'd like them to go for. You got to realize that there's some large percentage of the globe's populace who would gladly change places with you in this moment. There are people that are underprivileged. There are people who engaged in war. There are people who are on their deathbed. There are people who have, unfortunate diseases, et cetera, et cetera. So it's never as bad as our mind makes it out to be. And what I really want to do is I want to talk today a little bit about the subject matter of self-awareness. You've heard the term before, I'm sure, and let's talk about what self-awareness is. Self-awareness is the ability to distance ourselves from the thinking mind, to be the observer of the thinking mind and the stories that it is crafting. We are all great storytellers. My professor, when I went to my university and got my master's degree in spiritual psychology, he used to always say, you don't have to believe everything that you think. That's a very profound statement. And it's really important that we are aware of the fact that a lot of the stories that we are telling ourselves are just not true. In fact, in psychology, it is statistically proven that roughly 50% of all of our memories are fabricated. So when we're recalling a story from our childhood of something that happened to us that created a traumatic situation, as an example, roughly 50% of that story is actually accurate. And the other 50% of it is crafted through our minds and made up and made more dramatic than it really was. So how does this tie into the subject matter of meditation? But before we get to meditation and what meditation is, because I want to spend some time talking about that today, I want to create a model for you. And I learned this model from a brilliant teacher by the name of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Joe Dispenza is, I highly recommend you look him up. I'm a big fan of his and a student of his. I've attended 5 of his live events. He's taught me a lot over the last 6 or 7 years. And one of the things that he teaches is a model that goes like this. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions kick off a cascade of chemicals in our body, which create our experiences. Those experiences create new thoughts. So let's go deeper on that. Right down in the center of your head is the master gland of the body. It's called the pituitary gland. Every single person listening to this episode has one, including myself. And the reason that they refer to the pituitary gland as the master gland of the body is because it is quite literally the chemical pharmacy that exists within all of us. All day long, we are having thoughts. Those thoughts signal the pituitary gland, which kicks off a cascade of chemicals that we are then operating under. We are all quite literally operating under the influence of drugs at all times. So what are some examples of these drugs? Well, I like to use a provocative example. Maybe some of you that have seen me speak publicly have heard me say this before, but I think it's a really good example to really hammer this point home. If I came running at you with a knife right now in my hand, a large blade with a killer instinct in my eyes, what would happen to you? Well, the first thing that happened is you would have a thought, and that thought would be, I'm in danger. That thought would signal the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland would kick off a cascade of chemicals known as the fight or flight drugs: serotonin, endopinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol. These are the things that make you alert, make you be able to run faster, fight stronger, defend yourself. And you would then be operating under the hormones of stress, which would subsequently result in you being able to flee the situation or defend yourself, hopefully. You certainly wouldn't want melatonin to kick in. Melatonin would make you sleepy. You wouldn't want to be sleeping when I'm running after you with a knife. No, you'd want serotonin to be in place, which would make you very alert and make your focus very narrowed and tunneled. You'd be focused on one thing, the survival of yourself. Now, consequently, as an inverse experience, let's hypothetically say that I put a young infant in front of you and it was crawling on the floor. And this infant made its way over to a chair and climbed up the chair and stood for the first time and was very wobbly and then took its first step. The thought that you would have would be something along the lines of, wow, this is amazing, or this is beautiful, or this is miraculous. That thought would trigger the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland would kick off a very different cascade of chemicals. It wouldn't be fight or flight. It would be dopamine and oxytocin, the love drugs that would make your heart arteries swell and would make that energy in the center of your chest really big and would make you emotional in that moment. So again, every day we have somewhere between 60 and 90,000 thoughts. Those thoughts are very repetitive by nature. Roughly 80% of them occurred yesterday. All those thoughts trigger the pituitary gland, which triggers chemicals. Then we are operating under these chemicals, which have a significant impact on how we view the world, how we show up in the world, and how we vibrate energetically. So let's talk about energy for just a minute. It's an esoteric subject matter for some of you, but it is proven that we are all energetic beings. We are constantly vibrating energetic frequencies. They can measure this. There's an energetic field that exists around our body at all times. You've inherently experienced this before. So let me create a hypothetical scenario for you. I want you to think of someone in your life who is constantly a victim. They're constantly complaining. They're constantly blaming. They're invested in righteousness. They have againstness consistently in the way that they show up. Think of somebody in your life that shows up that way. What's your experience when you're engaged in communication with this person? Do you want to be closer to them? Do you want to spend more time with them? Or do you want this conversation to end so you can get away? I think the answer is quite obvious. And I'm sure that there's somebody that popped to mind in your life that shows up this way on a consistent basis. So this person by nature isn't very attractive energetically. And what's happening on an energetic level is you're picking up on the vibrational frequency, which is a low vibrational frequency, of their thoughts and their subsequent emotions. So emotions, the term emotions are energy in motion. Okay. When you're experiencing an emotion, it emits a vibrational frequency that others experience. Now, I want you to think of this in the context of business for a minute. Okay. Let's go to the business realm. If you're constantly showing up with a negative vibe, if you will, you see the shirts, good vibes only, right? If you're showing up with a negative energetic frequency that causes people to not really want to be around you because your thoughts and subsequent emotions that you're emitting are something that they're picking up on, you're probably not going to be as successful in your business as you would be if you were showing up with a positive vibe. Now, you've experienced those people before as well. So I'd like you to think of somebody in your life who has shows up in a quite opposite way. They're positive by nature. They take personal responsibility for their experience. They're curious. They're always looking for the learning in any challenging situation that they're experiencing. They have a heightened sense of self-awareness because they're looking inward at what their experience is. What's your experience when you're around that person? Do you want to spend more time with them or do you want to spend less time with them? Are you drawn to them or are you repelled by them? And I think the answer is quite obvious. You like being around people like that. You surely have somebody in your life that you're like, ah, man, I just love it when we hang out. I always feel better when I hang out with that person. Well, why is that you always feel better when you hang out with that person? It's because they're vibrating at a high energetic frequency. And you're picking up on that frequency and you're drawn to it. It lifts you up. So who would be the most successful business person? The person who vibrates low, the person who vibrates high. So this is why our thoughts and our self-awareness around our thoughts have everything to do not just with our business success, but our life success, the way we experience the world. If we are consistently thinking negative thoughts, our brain is trained to prove itself to be right. So if I have a story that I'm telling myself about the world that is not a healthy story, I'm going to be looking for evidence to prove that story to be accurate. If I'm telling myself a positive story, I'm going to be looking for evidence to prove that to be accurate as well. I'll give you a quick little autobiographical example. Okay, so I do a lot of meditating. We're going to get to that in a minute. I try to be as self-aware as I possibly can as a human being, although I'm certainly not perfect. So I was going through a stretch several months ago where I was feeling really tapped out with work. Like I was like, I got too much on my plate. Like this is more than I can handle. I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. And the story that I was telling myself consistently, both inwardly and outwardly, I would express this to my wife, I'd express it to my son, I'd complain to my work colleagues about it, is that I got too much going on and I just want to be balanced in my life. Like I don't feel like I'm balanced. And I was repeating this narrative over and over and over again. And subsequently, what was showing up in my world was proof of that, because that's what I was looking for. That's how it works. Whatever story you're telling yourself, you're going to look for proof to prove that narrative to be accurate. So one day I was on a walk. I live down in Costa Rica about half the time, and I've got this beautiful beach that I can walk on. And one morning I was on a walk and I was listening to some really beautiful music. The sun was out. The ocean was warm. And it occurred to me, like, look at where I am right now. I'm in this amazing environment on a Tuesday morning, getting my day started the right way. This is balance. I am balanced. I am so blessed to be able to get up in the morning and have such a beautiful environment to walk in and to live half my year in such an amazing place. Isn't that a healthier narrative for you to be telling yourself? And from that place, all of a sudden, I just started seeing things through an entirely different lens of all the beauty in my life, of all the things that I have to be grateful for. And we're going to get into gratitude again here in a minute. I mentioned what my buddy sent me in a text after going to church, but I want to go into gratitude in just a bit because there's a lot of statistical proof around the subject matter of gratitude. So again, recap: thoughts create emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. They create a vibrational frequency in your body. You emit that vibrational frequency. You either repel people or you attract people based upon your thought narrative. Self-awareness is being the observer of the thought narrative. Now, how many times do you just get lost in thought where days go by and you're not really paying attention to the thoughts that you're having, and they're having an enormous impact on your experience of life? Well, this is why it's so incredibly important for us to slow things down and to commune with ourselves, to go inward and to watch the thinking mind, to watch the narrative that's being expressed, that's impacting our experience of life. And that's what meditation is. Now, I've been talking about meditation for 30 years. I started meditating in my mid 20s, a little over 30 years ago. I've been a consistent daily meditator almost every day. I'll miss a day here and there for about 18 years now, from the time that I was 40 until now I'm 58 years old. And the thing that I hear, and I coach a lot of people on the subject matter of meditation in my Leadership 360 program. A lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, we go into great depth on this stuff because it's the important material. It's the stuff that people come to us for business growth, and they get all of that in the program. But what they would all tell you is that the stuff they didn't expect was the most valuable stuff, which is this war that is waged between the ears every day. And people come to me all the time, especially lately over the last 5-6 years, where meditation's become a really important and in vogue topic. And they say, I've tried to meditate, but I can't. I can't get my brain to stop thinking. Well, what if that's not the goal? See, I think that's the tremendous misunderstanding about meditation. So the word meditate, as Dr. Joe Dispenza has said time and again, means in translation to become familiar with. I'm going to repeat that. The word meditate means to become familiar with. To become familiar with your thoughts, not to get them to try to stop. In fact, and this may go over a few people's heads, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I really want you to think about this for a minute. If you're trying to get your mind to stop, then you're thinking. I'm going to say it again. If I'm trying to get my mind to stop, I'm thinking. It's a double bind. The mind will stop in meditation sometimes as an affect or an impact of meditation, but that's not the goal. As I said, I'm a very experienced meditator. I will meditate for anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, without stopping, roughly say 6 days a week. And there are many times where I'll go through an entire 60-minute meditation and my mind never stops. I've been meditating for nearly 20 years consistently. And then there are times where 7 minutes into the meditation, I'm just like somewhere else in a blissful state, and it feels incredibly peaceful inside. The ears hear, the eyes see, the heart beats, and the mind thinks. That's what it does. The mind's job is to be strategic. The mind's job is to plan. The mind's job is to protect you from dangerous situations. If you didn't have the mind to do that, you wouldn't think to look both ways before crossing the street. If you didn't have the mind to do that, you wouldn't possess the ability to strategically plan in your business for a change in interest rates, as an example, if you're in the mortgage industry. So it's a tool. It has often been said that the mind is a terrific servant, but a terrible master. So the question is this: is your mind your master, or are you using it as your servant? If your mind is your master and it's controlling you, then the good news that I have for you is that there's an opportunity for a very different life if you devote yourself to self-awareness and watching the mind. So let's get back to meditation. So I've had in these Dispenza retreats, these extended meditations. I mean, I've actually done a 4-day silent retreat where we meditated for 16 hours a day, not with Dispenza, with somebody else named Noah Levine, who there's an episode in the 360 Experience podcast of my conversation with him. It's a terrific episode that I encourage you to go back and listen to. But in these Dispenza retreats, we will meditate for anywhere between an hour and 4 hours in a given time. And I know that you're probably listening to this going, 4 hours, shit, 5 minutes is painful for me. Well, that's because it takes practice. I mean, it'd be like you going to the gym and working out for 4 hours, or you trying to run a marathon the first time you tried to go out and run. I mean, you got to build up to it. But what will happen when you meditate, when you sit quietly with your eyes closed and you start watching your mind, you start to become familiar with the repetitive thoughts that you're having over and over and over again. So I'm going to tell you a very vulnerable story. It's a funny story. I was at a meditation retreat about 10 years ago, It's a 4-day meditation retreat with Noah Levine. And we were in this long meditation for about 3 hours. And I was single at the time. And there was a very attractive woman that was just a couple of seats away from me. And I kept checking her out. I was very drawn to her and her physical beauty. And now you're probably thinking, why were you thinking about a woman when you're supposed to be meditating? Yeah, exactly. Right. But that's how the mind works. So it's 4 days. I'm having a heck of a tough time getting my mind to settle, thinking about whether or not she's noticed me, whether or not I wonder what her name is. I wonder where she lives. I wonder if I have an opportunity to introduce myself to her when this damn meditation retreat's over with. And a buddy of mine was there and he was meditating for those 4 days. And of course, because it was a silent retreat, we didn't get to talk to each other for 4 days. And he rode with me to the retreat out in Joshua Tree. And when the retreat ended, we got in the car. And the first words that came out of his mouth to me when we spoke for the first time in 4 days was he said, "Did you see that woman, how beautiful she was?" And I started laughing hysterically. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like I couldn't get my mind off of her. She was a major hindrance to my meditation practice for the last 4 days. But the reason I tell you this story is because there's a lot of liberation that happened for me during that period of sitting there and watching my mind. I would try to bring it back to my breath or the mantra that we were practicing. And, after a few seconds, boom, I would drift away to thinking about this lady who I found to be attractive. And by sitting there and watching the thinking mind over and over and over again, and how it was invested in my interests in her or wondering what we were going to eat, wondering what we were going to eat for dinner tonight, wondering how much time we've been meditating for, how much time we have left, wondering when my mind's going to slow down. I started to watch these repetitive thought patterns that are running in the background. And that's the part that I really want you to get your head around, is that all day long, you've got repetitive thought patterns that are running in the background of your life all day. When you're working out, when you're talking on the phone, when you're, laying down to bed in the night to go to sleep, when you're with your family and you're eating dinner, but you're thinking about work, there's always a narrative running in the background. And the beauty of meditation is it is a respite to give you an opportunity to sit and watch as the observer of the mind, its repetitive thought loop, and to start to see what thought patterns you're having that are not serving of you. So a little brain science for a minute. There's a lot of study and a lot of talk these days on the subject matter of neural pathways in the brain, neuroplasticity, etc. So when we have thoughts, repetitive thoughts, they literally start to groove what are called neural pathways in our brain. I want you to think of it as almost like a car driving down a gravel road over and over again. Before you know it, the gravel's not going to be flat anymore. It's going to have tire tracks. And those tire tracks are no different than the neural pathways in your brain. So if you start having consistent, repetitive thoughts, it's going to start to really grind into a pattern in your brain, these thought patterns. And again, some of these thought patterns are not particularly healthy. So always complaining about where interest rates are if you're in the mortgage business, or if you're a real estate agent, always complaining about how there's no inventory in the marketplace, or whatever your story is. Now, what happens is that once those grooves get ingrained into your brain, you get caught into this consistent thought loop. And again, going back to the model, those thoughts create emotions. Those emotions are energy in motion. They influence how you vibrate. They influence how you show up in the world, and they influence your experience of the world. So if I'm constantly saying my life's out of balance, my life's out of balance, my life's out of balance, and I keep saying it out loud and I keep complaining about it, talking to people about it, I start to groove into my brain this thought over and over that I'm not as in balance as I'd like to be. So what you really want to do is you want to create new repetitive thought patterns, ones that are healthier for you. This is what neurolinguistic programming is. It's something that Tony Robbins has been teaching for a long time. NLP was invented in the 1960s. And neurolinguistic programming is based on brain science. It's based upon grooving new thought patterns into your brain that are healthier. It's kind of like an upgrade. It's like your brain's running on an old operating system that is the old story, the complaining story, the victim story, the woe is me, the how life is bad, how I'm frustrated, this isn't working out for me. And it's upgrading to a new operating system that is a new thought pattern. Now, when you think about it, it's like, how are you going to refire and rewire new thought patterns into your brain structure that are healthier and subsequently create a better experience of life if you don't know which ones you need to refire and rewire, which are the unhealthy ones? So when we get back to meditation, that's what meditation's about. Can you let go of the control of trying to get your mind to stop? And can you just become the witnessing presence to the mind doing its thing? Now, yes, in meditation, we're trying to get the mind to slow down. In mindfulness practice, you're just simply observing the experience that you're having. In a mantra-based meditation practice, you're reciting a mantra over and over in a guided meditation. The guide, and I guide my clients through meditations all the time. Those of you that are Lone Atlas members that are listening to this, I have about 10 different guided meditations that I've created for you that are in the Lone Atlas that are incredibly powerful, where the guided process is taking you deeper and deeper and slowing your brain down. The more that you start to fixate yourself on an experience or on a mantra or on a guided process, sometimes what will happen is that your mind will just slow down and will go offline. And trust me when I tell you this, if you've not had this experience, it's an incredible experience. It's a blissful state. The extreme amount of peace that can exist when the mind is slowed down is very profound. Perhaps you've experienced this before when you're hiking and you kind of just get to a place of extreme presence, or when you are watching a sunset and it's just so beautiful that your mind just starts to slow down and you just feel the arteries in your heart expand and you're just experiencing that beauty. When you're looking at your infant when they're first born. I mean, there are many experiences. Those are all forms of meditation. They have the same exact effect. I mean, meditating is about extreme presence. So can you just be present with what is? Can you be present with those repetitive thoughts and go, oh, wow, I can see it. I am craving for the attention of this woman in the example that I gave you. Or I am constantly worried about my business and it's creating a lot of stress and anxiety and it's having an impact on my nervous system, which affects my health. I am constantly thinking about future plans all the time because I'm worried that if I don't have everything planned out, something will go wrong. These are the types of things that you will see when you start to meditate. Okay, that's great information. Those are repetitive thought loops that I'm engaged in that are influencing my experience of life and my success in life. What new thought patterns do I want to refire and rewire? So this is where gratitude comes in. So been a lot of talk on the subject matter of gratitude, a lot of statistical proof from major universities like Harvard and MIT about the importance of gratitude. Now, all gratitude is choosing a new narrative. So every night when I go to bed, every morning when I wake up, I connect with my higher power, my source, God, if you want to call it that, and I pray. And a part of my prayer practice is to identify 3 or 4 things every morning and every evening that I'm grateful for. It's not that hard. I'm grateful that I woke up this morning and that I'm still alive. I'm grateful for the meal that I had tonight and how it nourished my body. I'm grateful for the fact that I talked to my son today and we connected deeply together. I'm grateful for how beautiful it was outside. Choosing new, healthier thoughts is what I'm getting at here. And that's where the practice of gratitude comes in. So I would highly recommend that you adopt some type of a consistent practice of gratitude. Now, it could be journaling on gratitude. I used to do this consistently where I'd write down 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. Now I do it in the form of prayer, as I just mentioned. and adopting a consistent practice of self-awareness. And the best practice of self-awareness for me is meditation, as I said, to really just sit quietly with my eyes closed and to watch the thinking mind, to be the observer of the thoughts. And if you think about it, over the course of the last 20 years, I've identified a lot of thoughts from doing this. And some of those thoughts I just don't think anymore. But the environment that you're in, too, is super important. So let's talk about that. Part of self-awareness, in my opinion, is really understanding yourself enough to know what is healthy for you and what isn't. So for me, as an example, I'm a pretty sensitive person. I'm pretty sensitive to energy, as an example. So when I'm in highly chaotic environments like traffic on the freeway in Southern California, or if the news is on, sometimes I hang out with my mom and she watches CNN a lot, and I've got that running in the background, and I'm hearing about all the infighting and the political battles and this and that, and the wars that are taking place. I've noticed through self-awareness that it starts to really affect me. It starts to get me in a very negative state. I start worrying a lot. I start having a lot of fear around the world coming to an end, about, climate change, about all these types of things. And of course, the media is a big perpetrator of putting all that negativity out there because it's the clickbait that sucks you in. So I've identified the fact that it's not healthy for me to read the news. I identified during COVID that it was very unhealthy for me to be on Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook in, I guess it's been almost 5 years now. Because I was finding myself watching myself reading these controversial posts and then responding to them. I'm getting into a pissing match with somebody over and over again. And then I'd check inward and I would see that my body was all tensed up and my nervous system was jacked up and I was angry. And is that the experience that I want to be having with my life? Is that something that's healthy for me? Is it healthy for the people that I love that experience me on a consistent basis? Is it healthy for my growth and development as a business professional if I'm carrying that kind of energy into my experience on a consistent basis? No, not for me. Now, some of you, maybe it doesn't affect you in the same way that it affects me, but it's equally important to identify the things that affect you in a positive way. So as an example, one thing, and this is a part of like the morning routine aspect, et cetera. So I know that I need to meditate every morning. That comes first. That comes before working out even, really making sure that from a nervous system perspective, I'm settled. Then I have a certain type of music, spiritual music, that I really love to listen to, that's super high vibration, that lifts me up, that makes me feel really good inside. And I go for a walk every single morning for an hour. Walk in my neighborhood, being outside, breathing in the fresh air, listening to music that's uplifting, waving to people that I walk past that are across the street from me, saying good morning to them. I check in with myself at the end of that walk. I feel a lot better than I did before I went on that walk. If I have a day where I skip that walk, I don't feel the same. This is a part of the component of self-awareness that I'm talking about. What are the things that lift you up? What are the things that bring you down? So I mentioned before that I live in Costa Rica about half the year, and I'm very, very blessed to have that experience on a consistent basis. Costa Rica is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Its people vibrate at a very high level. They embody the phrase pura vida, which means pure life. They always have a smile on their face. And there are activities that I'm able to engage in there on a consistent basis all year round that are super healthy for me. So I can go for a beautiful beach walk every morning. The ocean's warm. I love to surf, so I can get out on my surfboard and start my day off right by maybe catching a few waves. There's a golf course in my neighborhood, and I like communing with my neighbors and playing golf and moving my body. There are pickleball courts. I like to still think that I'm young, so I like to run around and sweat. And those are all things that I've identified as being super healthy for me. So the question is, what is that for you? What lifts you up? What are your go-tos? Is it playing music? Is it, doing some type of art? Is it prayer? Is it reading is it reading novels that allow you to just kind of disappear from the chaos of the world and put you into a fantasy state? For everybody, it's different. Some of you, it's hiking. Some of you, it's skiing. Some of you, it's rock climbing. I mean, there are lots of different ways to meditate, to get present in the current moment, and to raise the vibrational frequency and your energy. So yeah, let me actually go deeper on that. Like a lot of people think that meditation is only sitting with your eyes closed and reciting a mantra and things like that. I mean, it is definitely a very effective way to meditate, which is why that is kind of the preferred form for most. But, there are lots of ways to meditate. I mean, surfing can be a meditation. I mean, you have to be incredibly present when you're surfing. I mean, nature is powerful. The waves are coming in. You need to be one with the wave. You need to be careful and make sure you're not turning your back to the power of the ocean. It requires presence. Skiing requires presence. That's a form of meditation. I used to love to hike along riverbeds and jump from one boulder to the next as I'm hiking up the river. It requires extreme presence. You can't be thinking about a whole bunch of things when you're doing that. Rock climbing, as I mentioned before. So what is that for you? What are the things that you can gift yourself and make as a part of your routine that put you into the present moment, that raise your vibrational frequency? And how is it that you can identify the negative thoughts and the negative environments that you're engaged in and shift that into a more positive thought frame and a more positive environment that you're in? Now, this is a practice. It's a habit. It's a discipline. My professor, when I was in school, once asked one of my fellow students who had identified a negative thought pattern that he was having that was really just completely crippling his life. I mean, he was self-sabotaging his entire life because he considered himself to not be worthy of earning money. And he was just not abundant financially. And the professor said, my professor said, how many times do you think you've had that thought before? The guy paused and said in front of the entire class, I don't know, like 1,000,000 times over the last 20 years. My professor said, well, what makes you think that just by deciding today that you're going to have a new thought, that all of a sudden you're going to start operating under that new thought pattern? And the point is this, is that just as going to the gym and working out requires consistency and requires a rhythm to it before you start seeing the results of your efforts, so does the topic that we're talking about here. It's the metaphorical gym for the mind. We're looking to strengthen the muscle of how we think. The Dalai Lama once said, if you want to know how your meditation practice is doing, check in on it once every 10 years. And what he was saying there is it's like watching a kid grow. It's like you've had that experience before. Your child, lives with you every day, and then you have a relative that comes over that hasn't seen him or her in 6 months, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much he or she's changed. Okay, so if you're looking at it every day, there's going to be these small incremental improvements that won't be distinctive. But if you look at it once every couple of years, you'll start to notice that you're just a happier person, a more settled person, and that you're creating more abundance in your life. So I want to close by saying this. What we're talking about here is energy management. Okay. If you believe, after listening to this, that your thoughts have an impact on your life, and your thoughts have an impact on the energy that you experience internally based upon the emotions that you're experiencing, which are triggered by those thoughts, and you believe that the energy that you're emitting and the energy that you're experiencing inwardly has an impact on how you experience life and how others influence you, then I guess my question for you is there anything more important than having a practice to manage your energy? I want you to think about that for a minute. We're talking about important stuff here. How many people do you know that go through an entire lifetime without looking inward, without having any self-awareness and self-reflection, that are repeating the same day over and over and over again? And that day isn't a particularly favorable one. And they get to the end of their life and they have regrets. They get to the end of their life and they look back on their life and there are more negative experiences they had than positive ones. That's why I say that self-awareness, the management of our energy, is a noble act. It takes bravery. It's hard work. It's some of the hardest work that I've ever done. It can get frustrating when you see yourself continually thinking the same things that are not healthy for you. But this is a lifetime work. If you want to have a better life, if you want to have more success in your life, if you want to manifest more abundance in your life, this is a practice that you can't afford to sidestep and not take a deep look at. There's only one person that can manage your energy, and it's you. Think about that. So, what are you going to do about it is my question. So, a couple of resources. I mentioned Sam Harris. I would definitely look into him. He's terrific. He is a Buddhist mindfulness meditation teacher. Noah Levine, who I mentioned earlier, podcast episode with him in the 360 Experience, well worth listening to. Dr. Joe Dispenza, my all-time favorite. He's absolutely brilliant at what he does. Huge fan of his. Highly recommend you go on one of his 7-day, week-long events. It's a life-changing experience. He also has a tremendous number of meditations on his website that you can download and listen to. I have probably all of them or close to all of them, over 100 of his meditations. That's who I meditate to every day. Deepak Chopra, many of you have heard of him. There are some apps out there like Headspace and Calm and things like that. Although I do want to say, I think that there's an entry point for everyone. So like, I'd rather have you meditate for 5 minutes than not meditate at all. But what I will tell you is that I often see people who don't receive the benefits of meditation because they meditate for too short of a period of time. As I mentioned earlier, I can sometimes do a 1-hour meditation, and it's not till like 37 minutes in to where all of a sudden the mind just finally starts to slow down, and I start to experience calmness and peace and clarity, and that really, really great feeling inside. Sometimes it doesn't even happen at all. So when you're only meditating for 5 minutes, you're not really giving yourself a chance to reap the benefits. It would be like going to the gym and doing, a 5-pound dumbbell curl one time, and then putting it down and wondering why your biceps aren't getting any bigger. Starting point, important, but try to work your way up. I hope that you have found this episode of the 360 Experience podcast to be thought-provoking. That's certainly the intention. Again, in the show notes, you can get access to applying to be a part of the Leadership 360 coaching program that we run. And it's the only coaching that I do one-on-one with people. And also learning more about the Loan Atlas, which is a tremendous virtual coaching resource that can be of great benefit to you. And again, those of you that are Loan Atlas members, thank you. And I'll be putting more meditations into the platform here very soon. I hope you have a great day, everyone. And thanks for tuning in to the 360 Experience podcast.